All right, everybody. Welcome to Pours with Patriots, episode 8. Sorry for the week-long, one extra week in between episodes. Had a little bit of a cold. Was not COVID, so we're all good. But I'd like to welcome my guest and his flexibility from last week, former Staff Sergeant Landon Bentz. So we know him by a different name here in the bourbon world in this Facebook thing. So if I call him by a different last name, that's because he's been hiding out, and we'll talk about that maybe as a question of why he has a fake Facebook name as he goes on. But we'll start off with, everyone knows we'll start off with the quote. Last 3 weeks ago, I blew it. It was a Marine Corps quote, so I was trying to channel my inner Marine where I couldn't read and stuff, but today I practiced. I'm going to give it a good go. So our first quote is, the Marines I have seen around the world have the cleanest bodies, the filthiest minds, the highest morale, and the lowest morals of any group of animals that I've ever seen. Thank God for the United States Marine Corps. And that's a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. So I thought that was a really actually pretty kick-ass quote.
Just makes me so proud inside.
Yeah, it does. Makes you all warm inside.
Yeah,
It makes you, proud to be a Marine. No,
yeah.
But that's all right.
Yeah.
But that's a great quote. So Landon is actually our second Marine Corps guest. We had another Marine Corps guest 3 weeks ago. So Landon has a little bit different career background than our former guest. He's been talking a lot of smack about the band, just as the band was talking smack about the Marine Corps infantry. So I don't know who's right.
They sound great. They sound great. They sound great.
They tell good stories too. So like a lot of my guests here, the ones that are local, Landon grew up in Ohio, Gahanna.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually graduated from Gahanna High School with another one of our former guests, Jason Stokes. Any good stories about Jason when you guys were younger? Nothing?
Not really that I can remember. I mean,
he didn't stand out at all, kind of like a...
I was a year older than him, and Gahanna is a pretty big school, so I graduated with 530-some kids, and that was 2004, so... I haven't been able to dig up any stories on him yet, but like I said, there's a lot of people there, so I still have to ask the right person.
I mean, the fact that you don't remember him, that's a fact in itself. He's actually here in the audience, so that's where I give him a hard time. But so to start off in good fashion, as we've talked about before, Landon's a former Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, infantryman. But to start off, this is one of my favorite things to start off with, because when Landon sent me his bio about enlisting, one of the things that jumped off, and I could not wait to talk about this, was actually Landon originally enlisted to be in the United States Army as an airborne infantryman. And he said he somehow got out of that, is what he wrote. He got out of that. So we got to talk about that story. So You decide you chose correctly the first time. You want to become an airborne infantryman in the United States Army, and then all of a sudden you get scared, like you realize you're not going to make it. Like what made you decide to switch it up?
In the Marine Corps, they always talk about, prac-ap before you actually do something. So that was kind of my prac-ap into the military was, pretending to join the Army and then, finding out what was wrong and all that. No, but so my senior year in high school, and I'd always grown up and been someone who was interested in like G.I. Joes and, playing with Army figures and things like that. So the military had always interested me. So my senior year, I was talking to the recruiters and kind of, started talking to an Army recruiter, and airborne had always interested me as far as jumping out of airplanes, things like that. So built that connection. What's that?
I see why.
Yeah. Built that connection with them, and then, went through the whole recruiting process and got my parents to sign the papers, and building up to that process, I just had this funny feeling that it wasn't, I wasn't 100% in. I wasn't sold on it. Got to MEPS, the military entrance processing station, bright and early on a Saturday morning, and was kind of going through that. And then my recruiters showed up, and I was just like, this isn't quite the time that I need to sign right now. Like, I've got doubts going on. This isn't, I don't want to sign on the dotted line. And so he kind of went over with it, and, was like, all right, I understand you've got doubt. It's normal, kind of just calm me down and basically just kind of in my mind convinced me to go ahead and sign with it. So I signed, raised my hand, sworn in, and then pretty much right after that, he cut off communication with me. So
he duped you.
This was fall of my senior year. So the next few months after that, it was building up to that. It was talking to him every week, and then after signing, it was, once a month, maybe would talk to him. And I was like, I'm just a part of it. I'm just a number at this point. So I found a caveat that where if you get a college scholarship, that you can actually get out of your enlistment. And I had a small offer to play volleyball. I played volleyball. Yeah, I get all the jokes about that. No, we don't wear knee pads. We don't wear spandex.
I don't believe it is because it's actually pretty small. You guys can't tell from where you're sitting there. So
I got
a setter probably. It definitely wasn't spiking, whatever.
I had some ups. That's most of my old days. But anyway, I had a small college scholarship, so I just presented that to the recruiter and went through the process and actually was able to get out of that enlistment with the Army. But that urge and that kind of need to go ahead and fulfill my tendencies in the military still lived on within me. So I've got a real good friend of mine that I was in the high school with, and then we actually ended up serving in the same unit together. But he called me up, and he had some issues trying to get into the military as far as health goes. But he called me up, and this was in July of 2004, and told me that, hey, he got the green light. He was able to enlist, join the Marine Corps, and he was going to leave in October for boot camp. And I said, I'm in college right now. This is back when we were doing quarters at Columbus State. And I was like, I want to try and finish out my quarter of college before I go, which would be December. He's like, that's great. See you down there. So he left in October, and then I finished out my first quarter of college at Columbus State in 2004. And then I think a week after that, I left on December 13th and got down to Geiger. Got down to Parris Island for boot camp.
That's what he said. That's interesting. So for the people that aren't military and that are listening to the podcast, there's a drastic size difference between the Army and the Marine Corps. So that one of the things you talked about is like feeling like a number. The Marine Corps is definitely a smaller force, a lot closer. So it's shame on the Army guy. For not following through, and we talk about later because you actually got into recruiting later on in your career, in your military career, so we could talk about that later. So go to Parris Island. So which is tougher? We asked the band first, and so let's talk trash. West Coast, East Coast Marines. What's harder, Parris Island or
Parris Island? Absolutely. Yeah. Slam that God forgot. I mean, West Coast is all Hollywood Marines. So you
guys all heard that. I hope there's some of them are listening.
They get to enjoy the beaches on the weekends while we're playing in the sand with the sand fleas.
Yeah, and I have to say, weather-wise, I've been to both places, so I have to say that North Carolina is miserable.
Absolutely.
South Carolina is miserable. That area is miserable. San Diego, Southern California is beautiful. So I'll give you the weather. That's true. So you went to Parris Island, the real boot camp for Marines.
That's right. The real deal.
And then you graduate there, and then after that you head to what I think is one of the greatest things about the Marine Corps, and I hear it from one of my friends even said it just recently, is the School of Infantry. You sent there in Camp Geiger, which is just outside of Lejeune. You graduated from there in 2005, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then so the time frame we're at now, some people may know the time frame, and being from Ohio, what was happening in that time frame. But Landon's actually first unit. He was actually assigned to a pretty I don't know where a pretty famous or well-known Marine Reserve unit in Ohio that is famous for some really awful reasons. So you actually were first assigned to Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 25th Marine Regiment, right?
Yep.
Here in Columbus, Ohio. And we talked, and you just missed their initial deployment to their first deployment to Iraq. Right?
Yeah. So kind of the timeline is that they, I believe, and this is, I feel like I should throw out as disclaimers all in my memory and things like that, but I believe that they got activated in March of 2005. And that's kind of when I had graduated from boot camp. And so I still had to go to the School of Infantry, which I went to and graduated in June. And so for the reserves, at least for my unit and what I've gone through and things like that, we do a buildup before our deployments, just because active duty guys go through, training daily, 5 to 7 days a week, 365. That's what they do. For reservists, obviously, we don't do that. We've got our training on the weekends, and then, in the summer we do our 2 weeks and things like that. So for us, we go through what's called pre-deployment, which is going to be out in California. So for them, they did, I believe, a month and a half to 2 months. They got activated in March, and then, we're over in Iraq in, around late April, early May timeframe. Again, this is just based off of what I believe. So with that being said,
he has had a few things of bourbon, so his dates, and he's also 36 years old. So So no one's quoting out things, but I think if you look at it, you don't have to look at timeline, but it does make sense of what was happening. So again, just to add that what is interesting when you say that is it's interesting. Like we've had a lot of reservists on here. Some episode that's crazy to talk about. How much training you guys go to. One thing I did want to add is even though I was an active duty when I train, we do have some places have training cycles you go into, and there are definitely some pre-deployment stuff that we do, but it's at our usually at the duty station where we're at. We don't go somewhere else, so it's crazy. So we had another guest on, Dr. Belushi, who was on before, and he actually was responsible for mobilizing the final medical clearance of Lima Company when they left. So you got for everyone that doesn't know, most people they probably do know. So Lima Company deployed to Iraq in 2005. They left with 180 Marines and Navy, or let's say Navy, 180 people. During the deployment, 22 were killed, right? I think it's 22 Marines. Yeah, 22 Marines and 1 Naval Corpsman. So actually, if you look at the history of it, you should absolutely. They caught a lot of shit in the small time. 2 IEDs that killed, I think the number was 9 and 11, and then a couple of Marines and a Corpsman were killed in action in a firefight. But in a short period of time, they really got the short end of the stick. So that time you're back here. You're assigned to the unit at that time still, though, right?
Yeah. So I got.
What's it like back here? That's one of the questions I had. What is it like? Did you know about that stuff that was going on over there? Or
yeah, we were catching updates, and I was still in communications when I was at School of Infantry, so I'd heard about the initial tragedies and the casualties that they had endured, and then it was just kind of somber coming back because I got done in June from School of Infantry and checked into Lima, and obviously everybody was gone. So there was just a skeleton crew of admin Marines and things like that. But we also had a few of the guys that had already been wounded and made it back stateside who were around. And so it was just kind of a somber time because for me, it's brand new. I mean, I'm checking into a brand new unit, less than a year into the Marine Corps and figuring that out. And then here are, guys who have been in the shit and who've come home with Purple Hearts, and you want to learn about the Marine Corps, want to learn about the unit, but you also want to give them their space because they don't know who you are.
Right.
And rightfully so, they probably don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Their worries are overseas with their brothers.
Yeah.
The
anger of who's this guy who just got here, has no idea what we've been going through, and everyone have time for you.
Exactly. You have no idea what we went through. So don't talk to me. So it was just interesting to kind of learn who to talk to, kind of learn the ropes of doing something brand new, but it's still being respectful of those guys because you don't know who you're going to serve with. You honestly don't know who you talk to or what they did overseas and things like that. So you just be respectful of that, and they'll open up and share with you if they want to and things like that. But it was a learning curve for sure with everybody gone.
Right.
So I didn't get hazed though, so that was pretty good.
Yeah. So other than the learning, I know that you want to learn, but I there has to be part of you. You're an infantryman in the Marine Corps that you want to go get in the shit, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So during that time frame, around that time frame, you decide to volunteer for to a unit, the 1st Battalion, 24th Marine Regiment out of Michigan, right? And you later deployed with them in 2016 to Fallujah. So was that one of your driving forces when you were still assigned to Lima? Were you want to get into the shit, or what was going on in your mind during that time?
Yeah, for me personally, they always say, you don't join the reserves to go to college. And that's just because we don't get the full tuition guaranteed. National Guard has that benefit, and there's different reasons for why people join. That's a big benefit of that. But for the reserves, mainly, we don't get full college tuition. So when I joined the Marine Corps Reserves, it's because I wanted to deploy. And I joined in 2004 at the very end, and we've had already been at war for 3 years. So I already knew that there was that possibility. That's kind of what I was hoping for. So when I got in connections with some former Marines and things like that, and found out a way of getting overseas and volunteering with the unit in Michigan. I was all about it and got permission from my parent unit with Lima that I could leave them and head over with a sister unit in Michigan with 124. And so in 2006, that's when we headed over.
Right. So back, I jumped the question, but when I was just having so much fun with the fact that you were scared to be an airborne infantryman in the Army. But so you did enlist obviously as a reserve infantryman. Like, was there any thought about going active duty? What drove you towards the reserve component rather than the active duty component of the Marine Corps?
Yeah, there was also the factor that my parents were going through a divorce. So at that time, they had already divorced, and just kind of reflecting back on home life and things like that, I didn't necessarily want to leave my mom doing full-time active duty. And like I said, we had already been at war. So to put her through additional stress that I assumed that she would go through, as most parents do, of men and women who join the military, she kind of already had a lot on her plate at the time going through things. So I didn't want to add to it, and I wanted to be home to be able to help her out. So I thought a good compromise between active duty and going to college would be to join the reserves. I could still have a pathway if I enjoyed it enough to want to do active duty, and the time was right that there's a pathway to go to active duty from the reserves, but there wasn't a way to go from active duty to a reserve unit unless you filled out your 4 initial years of enlistment. So I just thought the best way was go to reserves, help my mom, and then if there's a way to go ahead and go to active duty, if that was what worked out for me, that's what we did.
Right, because I'm a little bit older than you are, but I've talked about this before with some of the guests that were reservists. Like, when I came in 1990, when I got commissioned in 1994, we kind of looked down on the reserves and the National Guard. It was kind of like, you're not doing the real thing. And then 9/11 kicked off, and then wherever you went, you looked to your left and right, and the reservists and things like that. So I'm really glad I asked that question, because it is one of those things that it is amazing to hear someone that, even though you're driving towards, you want to do something, you want to serve your country, we still have hearts, and we're like, hey, I don't want to do that to the people I love. I had a question I've been asking people, like, obviously, I don't think your mom would have been such a fan of you to say, hey, I was going to join the Marine Corps and go be stationed in Pendleton for 4 years. That probably wouldn't have been a good conversation at the time, then.
No, I mean, my parents are both very supportive of what I did and my choices. I'm sure she would have supported me, but I didn't want her to have that additional worry, so I'd be home and take the decision away from her and put that in my hands. So it all worked out for the best for me.
Right, so now now he goes to I got to get in the jokes for everybody that's in Ohio. I'm not Ohioan, but you go to the state up north, you'd actually deploy with it. Now they know that I got to give you a hard time because you're an Ohio State graduate. You're a big Ohio State guy. So you go to Michigan to deploy, go to Fallujah, and actually were assigned. You were there for about 8 months, right? Yeah. And assigned to a MIT team there. Mm-hmm. So military transitional team. So a little bit after my time when I got out, because I got out in 2005, so that's when those things started up. So for the people that are listening, what exactly is the MIT teams? What was your mission over there?
Yeah, so there's two. There's the MIT team and the PIT team. So PIT would stand for Police Transitional Team, and then the military, or the MIT team, is the Military Transitional Team. So what we did was we worked with the Iraqi Army, and then the PIT team obviously would work with the Iraqi police. But we would go out on patrols, and at that time it was 3 to 4 Marines would go out with a squad of Iraqi Army soldiers, so about 12 of them, and then we would go patrol the streets of Fallujah and try and teach tactics, and at the same time trying to get them to take the lead on busting in doors, talking to locals, things like that, starting that transition of handing it over. And getting the military spun up to a point where they would be able to hold the city or hold, whatever land point that they needed to hold on to.
Right. So kind of like an advisor role, kind of, from the people that have been there and seen it, it's kind of the drag them by their collar and get them to get in the fight and do what they need to do. So I posted some good pictures about land. That brings us to the first discussion about pictures that you have. So obviously your first deployment was Iraq, and was proud enough to post one of your pictures with you saying "fuck Iraq." Is that how you felt from the MIT teams, or what was behind that picture? Because I think a lot of people deployed there, they feel that way. Is that humor? How much is that humor? How much is that reality with what you were going through at the time?
I would say it's 50-50. That was towards the end of my deployment, and at that point, having been in firefights and IEDs and things like that, it was just a point to where there wasn't a lot of, and being in a big city like Fallujah is, it's not like you would just have random locals that came through. I mean, people lived in the city, but we would get hit with IEDs and they would have no idea how it got there.
Yeah.
Not a single clue how this IED was dug in a hole right outside their house or right outside their business.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we run it over and it goes off and they have no idea how it got there. And it just got to a point where it's like, if you're not going to stand up and fight for your own country or fight for your own town or fight for your own home and business, then what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm fighting for my brothers and sisters, and that's it until we get home.
Right. I think that's, and I bring it up as a joke partly, but I think it's the reality of how some of us feel. I think you put in great words of, we're out there giving it all, and we're thousands of miles away from our own country, our family, with our friends. Our friends and ourselves are getting, fuck with, we're in the shit, and then something happens, and then all of a sudden no one knows how these things happen. It's frustrating. So I think everybody that served in Iraq, Afghanistan feels that same way. How that artillery round that's dug in the road, how they got there between yesterday and today, and nobody knows it. But so, and then another thing that happened during you're with Lima Company dealing with those Marines that were coming back. We talked about this, but you had another friend that in Iraq at the same time was assigned to the MIT team who was killed over there, Lieutenant Travis Mannion, Travis Mannion. So I can see where the fuck Iraq comes from. So if you guys remember that story, you absolutely should. He's actually a Naval Academy graduate. Was assigned to it was the same MIT team that you were on. He actually, I pulled this. I'm gonna read this because it's kind of important to say. But he was killed in action in Iraq. He and his fellow Marines, like Landon said, were with Iraqi Army counterparts that were ambushed while searching a suspected insurgent's house. Lieutenant Mannion led the counterattack against enemy forces. He was fatally wounded by an enemy sniper while aiding and downing and drawing fire away from other wounded comrades. His selfless actions resulted in nobody else other than himself losing their life that day. For his actions, he was eventually awarded the Silver Star and the Bronze Star for Valor. So a few days ago, last week during Memorial Day weekend, you posted a tribute. I think that's the second time that I've known you that you posted that about him. So how do you feel about that? Is that like you have a sense of pride, anger? How do you feel when you talk about him? It's
kind of mixed. When we talk about how it happened, from what I was told and what I've read, a young child was approached to where we were staying at and let them know that he knew where the position of a sniper hide was. So they went off that intel and set up a patrol, went out and checked the house where the suspected hide was. The first person who came out was our corpsman, and he got shot by a sniper and punctured his lung. And then another Marine, Siegel, ran out to try and recover him, and he got shot in the pelvis. And that's just what kicked off the ambush. And then amongst the fighting, Travis was shot by the sniper and was mortally wounded. So it's a point of pride just because that's the kind of guy he was. Yeah. He was a go-getter. He was going to lead from the front. The MIT team is kind of set up oddly. So there was probably 14 of us that were on the MIT team. So he was kind of my platoon commander, but he was only in charge of four guys. So it wasn't really like a platoon. But he was who was in charge of me. And they were on a different rotation. So his unit checked in January, and I had already been there for about 3.5 months. So then when my unit rotated out in April, it was towards the beginning of April, and he was killed towards the end of April. But just talking about him, if you've ever heard of the Mannion Foundation, there's a good foundation that's set up from his sister, and through some other workings, I've been in communication with his dad, and things like that. So I think his kind of valor lives on through his foundation and just the way that they keep his spirit alive.
Right. And you took a question I had about, or a statement I was going to be his sister, Ryan, for the Travis Mannion Foundation that supports U.S. military, veterans, and also the families of fallen heroes like the families of Travis. So I will post that at some point and Pours with Patriots to do that. But again, and my question was, are you active in that foundation? How can people help? What is the foundation? What is the foundation doing that you know about right now?
So they'll take donations and things like that, but they also set up, and I know with the way the past few years have gone, they've done some virtual like 5Ks and 10Ks and races and things like that. I've noticed that they've got a sign up going for some of their races, but I believe a lot of them can be virtual just because of the location. He's originally from Pennsylvania, and I think they still reside kind of close to Pennsylvania, DC area. Right. But just doing that, and they've got other community ways you can volunteer to help out. And I've talked to his sister and had ideas of trying to bring some of that foundation to Columbus, but I'm not entirely sure how to do that yet.
Yeah. We can talk about the offensive thing. What's striking about this is like like episode 8 in, and we're getting getting things rolling here. It's always fun to see that when I research that foundation a little bit, is they're kind of doing the same thing, which is why I started doing this. Was where they just help that one person. And it's amazing. A few days ago when I read that, I found myself going back and looking about him again. I know you posted about him before, and then, past couple of days in preparation for the podcast and looking at him, and you're just like, it makes you feel, I have a sense of pride, but I also have a sense of like anger, because I always look like, a good friend of mine that I posted about in the group, Mike Green. I always feel like a lot of time I'm like, he was a really good fucking dude, what I mean? Yeah. And the world is not better without him. And like, there's a lot of pride that he, felt the way he did, the things that he did, and he served his country. But there's also a lot of anger that resides in me. I think a lot of us that are just like, this is fucking bullshit that this guy's not here. And then there's a lot of guilt too, where, Mike hasn't, Mike, Travis, they haven't been able to have a family, live to be old people, lose their hair like us. Whatever, but that's amazing. So what's interesting about why I brought that up is it's crazy. So you're talking now in a couple years in your Marine Corps life, right? You're assigned a unit that gets the shit kicked out of them in Iraq. You go to Iraq with another unit, you lose a friend that's pretty close, a leader, and this is 2 years in. When I think about that, the time frame you're talking about, that's a lot to happen in a couple of years. You know what I mean? Yeah. Most people would be like, "Hey, I'm done." You decide, "Hey, I'm not done." You go back to Lima Company, and then a few years later, 2010, you deployed to Afghanistan, right?
Yes.
Yep. In the Helmand Province. Where were you stationed at down there?
So we were mainly stationed at Camp Leatherneck.
Okay.
In Helmand Province, and then we had a small patrol base, PB, right outside there. PB Boldak that we would rotate weekly between my unit.
All right. So different role. You leave there now. Before you were in a small mid-team, 14, Marines, U.S. Marines, or service members. Now you go as a squad leader, responsible for 23 Marines, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think is that where we start seeing the camel back? You on the camel, riding the camels because you guys can't get equipment. Talk about the camel.
Yeah.
Picture. How did that come about?
Yeah, that was towards the end of the deployment. So thankfully, Afghanistan was a little bit more calm where we were at. So that was just towards the end. And where we were at in Helmand Province, houses are spread out way, way far apart. So it's not like a normal city. It's more of your country area. So we had one of the local guys who had a camel, and
mine was a donkey. I have a similar picture. I wish I could find it, but it was me riding a donkey. It was like the same thing. I got to find it. I'll post it. I was trying to find it. I haven't been able to. I got to find the zip drive, but
yeah.
I mean, yours is actually cool on the camel because the donkey was like malnutrition, like everybody over there. So I literally only had to like put my leg over it, and it was just. But I think it's funny if you were deployed there and you don't have a picture of you with a camel or donkey. I feel like did you really go to Afghanistan? Because I think everybody was like,
and that was towards the end, and my give a fucks were already pretty low. So I was like, and I just told my guys to post up some security and hopped on for a little photo shoot. But you just never know when you're going to be able to do that again. So I just thought it was fun.
Well, I was like, there's another picture we're talking about because Afghanistan. I deployed to Afghanistan. So there's a couple pictures that bring back total memories. And that's what I love about doing this podcast and connecting with veterans is how our stories have this weird connection. So my story was we had a local warlord that would send out a guide with us, and his name was Sadiq. And he understood perfect English, but he wouldn't speak English. And so we'd be like a bunch of Americans talking, and we were talking about animals and taking pictures. Like, I need to ride a goat, all this kind of stuff. You know, making jokes, fucking around, doing officer stuff that that NCOs like to make a joke. And we're in this town, and like he just like walks off and comes back with this donkey. And like I said, the donkey is like, it looks like a gigantic dog. It was like mounted. I felt awful, but and he brings it up, and his interpreter's like, I'm like, what is this donkey for? And his interpreter's like, Sadiq said you want to take a picture with this donkey, so he got a donkey, and I'm like, what? So, and he's like hell bent on like, hey, you got to take a picture of this thing. So he's like, his interpreter's like, he wants you to get on it and all this kind of stuff, and I'm just like, and so of course, as an officer, every service, every enlist, all my soldiers are like, holy shit, I got to see a picture of this. And so, I get on top, get up, just like literally lift my leg and get on there. And then all the pictures go, I feel like I'm like a celebrity. And then of course, all the pictures come out, I'll find it. But it was so funny when I think about that. And then it was funny how everybody have to come back and take a picture of this like Great Dane looking donkey.
Yeah.
I think Great Danes are bigger than it, but it was pretty fun. But, and then, so the other picture you had was, which caught my eye, was the pot leaf that looks like a Christmas tree. The pot plant that looks like a Christmas tree. Tell me that story.
Caught your eye, huh?
Well, yeah. Tell me the story. Where did you see that at? What was...
So there was just a small town in Afghanistan right outside the patrol base, and I'd say small town of maybe 10 homes.
Right.
So we would roll down Main Street and just doing our initial knocks and greets and things like that inside the compound, because all the homes over there all have walls. Inside was 2 guard dogs, which dogs in Afghanistan are just like fucking bears. I don't know. I don't know what the
bigger
breed,
than the donkeys.
Yeah, I don't know what the breed is or what they mix it with, but it's some of the most monstrous dogs I've ever seen. And their bark is just vicious. But so they were inside, and then this homeowner just had a field of marijuana plants, and we were just, you don't see that every day in the U.S. So we were like, wow, this is a perfect photo op. And much like you, my lieutenant was the first one to volunteer to take a picture with it.
I wasn't the first with the pot leaf, but that's all right.
And then held the camera for me. So, he helped out.
So before I tell my pot plant story, let's talk about how far are you long? I don't want you to chug that, but I'll tell my story first, and then we'll do our first bourbon break. Look, he's going to chug it. So I guess we're going to do the bourbon break now. But it was funny. We were doing these like team villages, we called them, in Afghanistan, and we go provide medical assistance and, all these, the civil affairs folks, PSYOPs folks, we go there, medical people, dentists, and all that kind of stuff. And we're in this village, and I just noticed all these soldiers are like just rotating out of what they were doing. Leaving like vehicles and going over to this school building, and you're kind of like, what is everybody doing? So you kind of watch, and like, it's literally like one after the other, and like, what the hell's going on? So go over there and find like, what's going on. And in front of the school is literally like 3 plants the size you had before in a schoolyard in Afghanistan. All these pot plants. And I'm like, the first thing I say, and I swear to God, and it feels funny, is I go, what the hell is that? And when my soldier's like, that's fucking pot, sir. What do you think that is? I was like, I've never seen a pot plant, let alone have I seen a pot plant that's 10 feet tall. And they're like, go get a picture in front of that. And I'm like, fuck no, I'm not. That's the one time it was after the donkey, so I probably learned my lesson about not to get on it. But I was like, I'm absolutely not going to get in the picture of 3 pot plants that are 10 feet tall. But this is the middle of school, and I bring that up because all the things we're doing over there, I was always shocked at how free flowing drugs were everywhere. You go into a village and they're like, oh, do you want some bread? Do you want Fanta? And do you want hash? It's like, hash, no. Fanta, yes.
Yeah.
Bread, yes.
Yeah.
It was crazy to see those 2 pictures, because it really brought back a flood of memories to me.
Yeah, it's just interesting to learn just to see their culture. But yeah, there's no rules or laws over there. Opium is their number one product that they make for profit. So they would make more marijuana. It just doesn't make the profit that opium does.
Yeah, but like when you see it in a school, you're just like, it's crazy. And then that's when I finally learned that, like, one of my soldiers said, like, I was definitely a square. I was like, I've never fucking seen a pot plant before, but it was pretty. So he said, just puffs with Patriots coming soon.
Quit stuffing your
maybe
pockets
for Landon. I don't know. There's no evidence of me ever being there, but the donkey, yes. So you ready for the first break for bourbon? So
Yeah.
we've been drinking some other bourbon, but this is the part that gets you going fast. So Landon's one of his favorite bourbons is Russell's Reserve. So he brought us today Hotel Covington. Russell Single Barrel. A little bit about Wild Turkey. If you don't know about Wild Turkey is located in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. You want to rinse it out first? It was to the Rippey Distillery. The Wild Turkey brand came in, rumored to come into effect after one of the Austin Nichols executives took some old Rippey product on a turkey hunt. They really loved it, and they were like, "Hey, when are you guys going to bring some more of that Wild Turkey?" So Austin Nichols, if you look at some of the old time bottles, that's when they started Wild Turkey back in 1942. Wild Turkey is pretty famous for its master distillers. It's got the oldest master distiller, home of Hall of Fame master distiller Jimmy Russell, who's been at Wild Turkey for over 65 years, I think now. He's the longest tenured active spirit master distiller in the world right now. The distillery and the Wild Turkey name was originally sold off to Pernod Ricard in 1980. It was again sold in 2019 to the Campari Group, which now owns the Wild Turkey name and the distillery. The Russell's Reserve program, which you see here, the Single Barrel program, that started in 2013. And that was kind of a tribute to Jimmy and his son Eddie. It has their name on it, Russell's. They later started the private barrel selection, which is what you see this in 2014. All Russell's Reserve barrels right now that we know of. This one we look at, we'll talk about age stated. If you looked at this, was not age stated. I had one out here that has it. So this is the older version of it. The newer version is actually age stated, but the one we have before here was not age stated on the bottle, but it was anywhere from like 8 to 10 years. Nowadays they actually show it here. They tell you exactly what it was. Depending on people, though, the Common Core math is not that good. The numbers don't always add up to what those numbers mean, but it's kind of an inside joke to the bourbon people. But brought in this bottle. This is actually, in the bourbon world, is probably one of the most sought after old school bottles. It's supposed to be one of the better ones that are out there. And the mash bill on this is actually the old school Wild Turkey mash bill, which is 75% corn, 13% rye, and then 12% malted barley. So thanks for bringing that. I've never had this. I'm actually glad you brought it. That way I don't have to drink mine because it actually is pretty damn good.
Yeah, at least around Central Ohio, it's one of the unicorns for the.
Yeah, it is. No, it's a really good one. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. And what's great about this is the program here. If you look at the bottle here, it does tell you the warehouse it comes from. The new labeling is over here. We'll talk about that too. It does the same thing here, but these definitely have a lot of this is a CNF, which is a pretty popular warehouse and location for Wild Turkey. So thanks again for bringing that.
Absolutely.
Enjoying having it for my first time.
Cheers.
It is so good, by the way. So good. So that's our first commercial bourbon break. So come back. You're in Afghanistan another 8 months, so a total of 16 months or just under a couple of years deployed.
Yeah, we do 7 months.
What's that?
Our deployments are typically 7 months for Marines, 7.5 months, somewhere around there with it.
So you come back. You came back in 2011 from that deployment. Yep. Stayed in a little bit, and so as we talked about, Landon was a reservist, so he was doing some other jobs on the side, which is interesting. We had some conversation about that. You worked at Dick's a little bit in the warehouse, but you did some recruiting.
Sporting goods.
Dick's Sporting Goods, yeah.
Sporting
Dick's, not the restaurant where you act like a dick. He actually would probably fit in really well in both of them. He's an athletic guy.
Not with Dick's either. At Dick's.
And then, so you did a couple. You said you did. How many times did you do the recruiting stints? Was it 1, 2?
I think I did a total of 3 recruiting rec aids, recruiting aid, active duty stints, which were I believe like 6 months apiece. And I remembered actually when my unit was getting back, I was on administrative active duty, so I was doing just 3 months with my unit on active duty. So there's a little bit in there, plus some schools that I went to and things like that. But yeah, just odds and ends things to stay busy, but school wasn't quite what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I stayed away from
So the recruiting thing, did you draw upon like when you were a young, high schooler where, like you said before, it's interesting, like making jokes aside, had that Army recruiter, followed up and been, more like, involved in your life, your whole life could have been different. I mean,
right.
you could have been more proud. You'd have airborne wings. You would have worn Maroon Beret. You would have a lot more respect from, everybody, like including myself. I mean, so
all joking aside with my hat on.
I mean, like jump boots. I mean, beret. I actually forgot to bring my beret down here. I was going to do it and make a joke with you, but but also, and all jokes aside, did you take that experience you had as a young high schooler when you were recruiting? Did you make the recruits feel, make sure they didn't feel the same way that you felt? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wish I could say that, but no, I just had a good recruiter that I enjoyed hanging out with, and he was like, "Hey, we could bring you on for 3 months since you know the area." And I was like, "Done." So I just traveled around him with my uniform, and if you're in your dress blues around 18, 19-year-old women, it was a good time.
After the beach ball, it's a great answer, by the way. I thought, like, yes, of course. I want to make sure they feel important, but yeah, I mean,
but yeah, at the same time, share my experiences from a real world, not like a brochure what a recruiter may share with you.
Yeah,
but yeah,
no, but all joking aside, though, if you look at when you were recruiting in, if you like, we make jokes about it, but 2014 is when you graduated, right? 2004, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So the war just kicked off. So a lot of those recruiters, even the officers enlisted, they hadn't deployed, a lot of them. So like that's interesting. Like you go into recruiting when you get back, you've deployed twice in a short time. It was a different Marine Corps, it's a different military. I think that's
right.
That is definitely a thing. I think a lot of times, when I joined in '94, there's people that are just like, I joined to get my GI Bill, and nothing's going to happen here. Blah blah. We beat the Russians. The Russians have been like, the world changes. People are like, whoa, time out. You know what I mean? So that's. I mean, I'm sure. All joking aside about being on active duty and things. I mean, I think that was probably important to tell these young Marines what they're.
Yeah.
What it means. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was. I mean, I would say I'm more of a real person, so I'm not going to give you like the cookie cutter answer.
Right.
So it was more for me being able to be an outlet and a resource for these high school kids to be able to ask questions and get like a real answer from somebody who just went through it,
right.
not somebody who went through it 4 years ago or however long ago. So yeah, I was honest with them about that, but it was honestly, it was just a good time to be able to get into different high schools and talk to kids and share what I did and be proud of what I did and talk to them about it, but also, just hang out and bring the pull-up bar into the high school and let kids try to get 20 and keep telling them that they're at 19.
The Marines are good at that. You guys come in with the pull-up bar. Everyone's trying to get the pull-up bar.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. It's funny to hear you say that because it's interesting you say it. So Landon actually, done a bunch of different jobs, and then on and off was going to Columbus State. You graduated from Columbus State, and then eventually found your way to the Ohio State University, where you eventually graduated in 2018 with a degree in Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training. So you decided to become an athletic trainer.
Yep.
As he's moving on, the one thing I forgot is, during that time in 2014, a few years earlier, you actually were discharged, medically discharged because of a bad back, right?
Yeah.
Which is not service connected. We were making a joke about it.
Nope. VA cannot find a way to connect that to my military service of 9.5 years and 2 deployments.
So how old were you in 2014?
What is it? That was 8 years ago. So I'm 36. So I was 28.
So normal for 28-year-olds are back to go out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was doing drill and doing our PFT, which for us, Marine Corps, we have to run 3 miles and not, 2 miles for the Army before you guys get picked up by trucks.
Come on. It's actually the new Army physical fitness. What is it? What's the actual
Army combat fitness?
Army combat physical fitness test is, I heard, pretty tough, according to one of your high school classmates. And yes, we still run 2 miles, but I mean,
is that like a sleeping bag race and a?
You can't tell by this, but I used to be pretty fast.
But I was running the PFT, and at the turnaround point, the 1.5 miles, my back just locked up, and so my left leg, I couldn't really move it a whole lot, and I tiptoed into the halfway point and said, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
So I went back and did 3 months of PT and didn't get better. So they said, here's your papers.
Right. Yeah. Which is funny because we've had a couple of different people on the podcast. There's different feelings about the VA. I made a pact with our last guest that I'm going to go, but I absolutely hate the fucking VA with a passion. That's my non.
Cheers to that.
That's my non thing. So again, 28 years old, a bad back it goes out. It has nothing to do with what you've been doing. It's probably from, I don't know what else is doing, but no, it is a discouraging thing. So, but again, for everybody that's out there, the VA is a great asset. You should use it. My experience, your experience is not everyone's experience in the VA. It's important to say. So, a lot of people get a lot of good things from VA. In our area, actually, the Columbus area has really good. It supposedly has really good, but now that I hear what you got through, kind of goes with my whole. I hate the VA. I hate the VA.
I just got. I've been waiting 3 weeks for some medicine from the VA, and I just got it in the mail, and it was allergy medicine. I don't have allergies. So they sent me medicine that I don't even need or use, and I still don't have what I've been waiting on. And that's just one of many stories with the VA.
But all joking aside, this is one of the things because I get a lot of criticism. I actually have got a lot of criticisms about this. The political answer is the VA does do a lot of great things for some people. It's not the best for some people. You absolutely, as veterans, use it, do the best you can, push all the buttons to try to do what you can, especially when it comes to mental health. I think that's one of the most important things. Forget about your back. My back is fucked up. A lot of the things are doing that. Like I have no hearing from the time I joined the Army to when I got out. Again, the Army's like, I don't think that happened from the military. Like, what's wrong? Like, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's normal for a 32-year-old to have hearing aids. It's my bad. No, but the mental health aspect about it is it's in the forefront. If you're feeling that, you absolutely have to get with them. Do that. I made a pact with the last guest that I would give the VA a second chance. I can't believe I fell into that, but I'm going to follow my word. But again, when I said I hate the VA.
Yeah, they are a resource.
It's a resource that works for some people. It doesn't.
I'm not going to say the best resource for me, but
my dad, like I talked about, my dad is like loves the VA. Like my dad, the VA is the greatest thing. They cut his toenails. They give him like, they give him the nicest glasses you've ever, like, the prescription glasses. You're like, Christ, Dad, do not wear those by me. You're embarrassing me. You know what I mean? They give him the wrist brace, the back brace, all this kind of stuff. I mean, they actually give him the right medicine. But he has to drive to Dayton to get one of them because somehow the VA cannot ship that from Dayton to my dad or from wherever. But my dad is in his 70s, has to drive there.
It's crazy.
Probably like 5 more years when my dad can't drive. That'll be my focus to bitch to the VA about why my dad can't get this medication shipped to him. But yeah, again,
or even shipped to the Columbus VA.
That's a good point because he actually can only get it from Dayton, an active duty place. He has to get. I forget the technical terms on my medical guy, but like, what's the knockoff for it? Like, so the knockoff, the generic drug for this, he can get it at the VA. The VA will ship it to him, but it has a side effects. It does not work for my dad. But again, my dad cannot get it from the VA here. He has to get it from an active duty place. Closest active duty base is, the air station or Dayton Air Force Base. So, which is crazy. But again, the VA is awesome. But I hate the VA. And that's probably the most political we're gonna get. I mean, some people are laughing. I'm laughing only out of frustration.
Yes,
I think you feel the same way. It's
I
really don't like it. A lot of people don't. And to be honest with you, this is the only political thing you can add on to it. We bitch about a lot of shit, but everybody that's a veteran, that's not a veteran, you need to talk to your representatives about the fix of VA because the VA system does not work. It's broken. It absolutely needs to be fixed. I absolutely 100% believe it's the reason why a lot of us are in the situation with us physically and mentally, and it needs to be changed. So come together about something that really fucking matters, and that's taking care of people that have put themselves on the line for the country. So that's my get off the soapbox.
Absolutely.
Super political thing. So
yeah.
And again, I hate the VA. That's the last thing I'll say about that. So, well, it's cool when I talked about you answered the question about the recruiting thing. You worked for, you got out initially, you worked for a different place. You worked for, was Ohio Health first?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
For about a year or so as a trainer. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you eventually went to Ohio State as as a trainer, which you've been there now since 2019,
Yeah.
and you took your first job as an athletic trainer at a middle school, Big Walnut, which is close to us, right?
Yeah.
You originally tell that story because you originally said you applied for the high school job, right?
Yeah. So my first year when I graduated from college, I just got a job with Ohio Health and worked out at Newark High School for a year, but wasn't quite full time. And I knew I wanted a full time position, especially being older and having gotten out of the military. And I think I was 32 or 33 at the time. And was like, I got to have a fixed income. And had heard that the Big Walnut position that was going to be open. And at that time, I just knew it was going to be the high school. So I talked to Ohio State, which had gotten the contract. So there's Children's and Ohio Health and OSU. So there's three big ones, and OSU got the contract. So I talked to them and interviewed with them with the intentions of the high school position. And they said, well, just to let you know, the high school position has been filled, but we want to, just do a meet and greet with you because we've got a middle school position open that we think that you might be a good candidate for. And at that time, I was like, fuck no, I don't want to work at the middle school. Like, I'm 32, I'm 33. You got 12.
I'm going to kill these children.
12 to 14-year-olds that I am not going to be able to connect with, or, they're just going to annoy the piss out of me every day with just being immature and whatnot. But, I talked to my wife and ended up
She told you were going to do it, which is.
Well, just weighed the benefits and things like that, and ended up taking it. And it was the best decision of my life because I've been there, like you said, since 2019, and I've been offered other high school positions since I've been there, and I've turned them all down. I've wanted to stay at the middle school since I've been there and grow that program. So,
right, I think the first time I talked to you about that outside the bourbon world was like you saw my middle son play football out of Big Walnut, and it was kind of crazy. So it's always, when you research and stuff, it was so crazy. I was like, still remember that. You remember seeing that? And that's crazy. I had a question where like it had to be. You had the same thing. I have a 21-year-old. I have a soon to be 20-year-old, 19, and then my wife hates when I make older, but then 17, and. Like, I feel like I haven't related to them since they were probably like 10 or whatever. So was it, were you nervous? You were actually nervous about relating to them as, 12, 14-year-olds. How did you feel going into that? Did you think like, how the hell am I going to bond with these kids? Am I going to choke one of them out? Like, what were your thoughts?
And it's tough just because in the profession of athletic training and a lot of healthcare places, you have to build relationships with your clients and with your athletes and with your patients. So that's why I was so concerned, because I was like, how am I going to build relationships with these kids?
Right. You didn't have kids at the time either. That's
no, and I didn't have kids.
Yeah. So sorry to
I had nieces and nephews, but it was like, I don't know how to relate with these kids. But then I remembered that I was in the Marine Corps and that we are extremely immature. So when I started, I had no problems creating these working friendships with these kids. So yeah, I got over it. It went pretty well.
I'm pretty mad because you took my joke. I was going to use that as a joke, but no, it's just true. I think it's great. I mean, and the funny thing to listen to how you talked about it was, even through recruiting and now, is like it is funny. I think veterans and people that have seen things. It's always interesting that we're always worried about how do you connect with someone and share the experience. Do you talk a lot about your experience as a former Marine, or are you like, hey kid, you sprained your ankle, suck it up, your leg could be blown off, stop complaining, here's an ice pack, or like, do you talk to them about your military stuff?
The kids or
the kids that you're working with?
They usually typically know that I served in the Marine Corps. I mean, I don't have, big banners or posters or anything hanging up in my office or outside my doors saying, hey, I'm a veteran or anything like that. But a lot of the coaches and Big Walnut, for those that don't know, is located in Sunbury, Ohio. And there's a real nice memorial out there for the fallen heroes of Ohio. So to me, that was kind of a perfect fit, just being a military guy, going to a town that's very pro-military, very supportive. So a lot of the coaches that I have tell the kids that, I served, or, if it's in the fall with Veterans Day, or if it's in the spring with Memorial Day, they always typically reference me and the fact that, say thanks to, Landon for served, or say thanks to his friends or whatever. So yeah, it's good.
And you're missing the part where they're like, that guy's a former Marine, do not go tell him that your ankle hurts unless your ankle, like the kid's ankle's broken. He finally comes to you, he's like, Mr. Bentz, My ankle doesn't feel so good, so I wrapped around. Like,
I take
come
the
on, so, yeah.
I like to take the major pain approach. Where you're like, oh, your ankle hurts. Let's see your finger.
Which I think is great. I mean, it's great to have someone that's that level of. I mean, so back to athletic training. So I'm older. I don't remember ever having like. It's crazy. Like, you know, all my sons play sports. All my boys played baseball. My middle one played baseball and football. So it's crazy to go to like a sporting event in Ohio. I don't remember it in Texas, to be honest with you, where there's an athletic trainer, like multiple athletic trainers at every sporting event, whether it's varsity, JV. Is that just an Ohio thing, or is that now went all over the United States?
Yeah, it's becoming more national.
Okay.
And it's really just dependent on, rural locations are a little bit tougher to get a job or position or honestly just finances for it. But since, especially with concussions becoming so prevalent, it takes the liability off of coaches and officials to try and make that call. So honestly, I feel like it's more a position of just take the liability off of people.
Yeah.
But we're also there to, obviously diagnose and recognize injuries and evaluate those and try and dictate what an athlete can or can't do and try and keep everybody safe for the most part.
Well, I think it's crazy because, like, honestly, like, my oldest son was a freshman when we moved here to Ohio. But I don't remember, that's not that long ago, honestly. I don't remember there being these trainers, and I think it's a great thing as a parent because, you have a parent that, like, they see their kid, some parents live through their kids about, athletics, and they're like, your arm doesn't hurt. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've actually been guilty of that sometimes. Like, my middle son is great. Like, he literally broke his ankle and had to have surgery within like 5 days. And we were at Olentangy, and I'm like giving him like the thumbs up and thumbs down. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, and he's just like, and he comes off the, and he came home, and, when I saw him, it was probably one of the hardest moments when I saw him. Like, he's a tough dude. And when I saw him, I was like, he's hurt. And then I actually, that next morning, that was Friday Night Lights, Saturday morning, he drove himself to Orange High School. He broke his right ankle, so figure that out. And he comes back as like, the trainer says we have to go to the hospital. I'm like, what does this guy know? And he's like, it's bad. And then literally, so it is great to have. I think that's great to see it. I asked that question in all seriousness because I don't remember that. I remember, I played baseball in college, and I think we had a trainer that we go see, but there was no one like when you look over, in the middle of the game that somebody can like look at you and say, forget about what your parents are telling you, forget about what your coach is telling you, like, we're shutting you down. And you can make a joke about the liability, but I think ultimately it comes down to, taking care of that student athlete, which I think is important because, when you're 12, 13 years old, you're terrified to say you're hurt.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, Jason and I graduated in 2004. And back then we had one athletic trainer, and I was a class of 535 kids times 4. And there's one athletic trainer.
Yeah.
Where now, you got 2, 3, 4 athletic trainers for that amount of kids and athletes and things like that. But yeah, not to be on a soapbox much at all, but it's just a great way for us to help parents as well. Just to be able to say, hey, this is something that you want to go spend some money on, get an MRI, get it checked out, or, just give it a couple of days and then we'll see from there. But, it's just a little bit more of peace of mind for parents that somebody's there to look after the health and safety of the kid, not just wins and losses. Yeah,
and I honestly feel like that's crazy. So my two oldest sons both. Well, the oldest one graduated, but he played college baseball. My middle son is actually a Division II football player. And the reason I asked that question again is like, he got hurt. And my middle son just got hurt last year, and I feel like in high school around here, there was more communication back to us as a parent and as to the athlete about what's going on. Like I'm sometimes like, what's going on? When's your clearance? He's like, I don't know. And that doctor, that trainer is, again, at a college is overseeing, multiple sports, and it's crazy. And it's a great profession. I mean, when you look at it, I think it's amazing because there's so many kids, that unfortunately, get hurt early and they're pushed by parents or, I think parents are the, there's a triangle that's awful about it, but parents is just like, you're not hurt. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Get out there, and then you're like, and to be honest, as a parent, I've been guilty about that. So it's crazy. Like, do you get a lot of parents that push back and like that, or do you ever have a parent that's like?
Not too many. I mean, it's more coaches that I get pushback from, and that's another reason why I love the middle school level is that it's middle school.
Right.
I mean, there's no scouts there. There's no scholarships being offered. So if a kid needs to take 2 weeks off, the coach is typically okay with it. Parents are typically okay with it unless they're some of those ultra type parents who are like,
Right.
oh, he needs to be back in a week. We got, games coming up. We've got this, that, and other. We've got to get footage. And it's like, are you kidding me? He's got 4 more years. So
Yeah.
no, I don't.
He's 12 years old.
Yeah, I don't.
And he's really not that good at football, by the way. No.
Right. Yeah, he's second string, so you got more to work on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get a ton of pushback, but high school is a different beast. Yeah.
No, I think it's great. I mean, all the profession. I think it's it's neat to see that there's that level of care. Even at the middle school, that's even crazy to me. That at a middle school, there's there's trainers that are assigned there to look out for the healthy. I think that's pretty great. So you've been doing that for a couple of years now, and you're like an older parent, I'd say, right? The first time you had your kid, a little older than a lot of people.
Yeah,
so
just a little bit.
Your wife Lauren and you just had a baby Lawson. He's 9 months old. Mm-hmm. So you're like at the end of the spectrum. You started really late. Again, talks about the Marines, immaturity, start really late.
Yeah.
I mean,
we get distracted sometimes, so figuring out the path of life is a little delayed.
So how's Lawson treating you? How's life as a dad?
It's I don't have a whole lot to complain about. He's been pretty good so far. There's little things here and there, but oh man, it's been great, to be honest with you. He's you get worn out by the end of the night, and you're like, I can't wait till he goes to bed. And then you lay there in bed and you're like, man, I can't wait till he wakes up in the morning and start playing with him again. But
do you pull the bad back with your wife? Like, I can't hold him because my back hurts. Have you used that?
No, not yet. Okay. Not yet. He was a big boy. He came out at 9 pounds or 10 pounds 2 ounces. So he's already above 20. And good God, man, I got to put him down because he's chunky.
So you're late life dad, like 30. 36 when you had 37,
35
okay,
when he was born.
Yeah. My first one I had way younger than that, a lot of people. So do you feel like all your life events have helped you better with that, or like what's your thought on being a late bloomer? You know what I mean?
It's I don't think there's a lot that could prepare me for patience. I mean, the patience that it takes to have a child and to raise a child takes a lot, but there's with the new rules in the military where you can't haze or choke people out. You got to learn some patience there. So I learned some, but trying to transition, I would say for me, it's a little bit tougher just because I'm more of a control type person. I don't want to say control freak, but having gotten out as a staff sergeant and having years of being in command, when you say something that gets done,
that's not going to work when he gets older.
You
need to forget that now.
And even now you say something and he just doesn't understand what you're saying. It's just like, what is your deal?
He's going to learn this word soon.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then we're going to have, an issue.
No, you're gonna no. No, because it's funny saying, because I can imagine that like I had a child around that age, but like starting off, like I think as you get older, definitely like your patience is thinner. Like I like my patience lasts like a minute and a half, maybe 30 seconds, depending on what's going on, depending who you're talking to. It could be 15 seconds, but
or even just being strict on like timelines. How you are in the military, you got to be somewhere by a certain time. And it gets to his nap time.
I'm gonna treat you. No,
time for your nap, and he's wide awake, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. Just get tired and go to sleep. That's all. It's as easy as it has to be.
I will tell you, it only gets easier. It gets wrong. It's great now, but congratulations to you and Lauren. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So back to so now we've talked a little bit about your military career. We've talked about your professional career, now as being an athletic trainer. So what's your toughest time that you've had, professionally, personally? Was it the Marine Corps times, deploying to Afghanistan, Iraq, dealing with losing, your friend Travis? What's been Landon's tough time?
Yeah, I would say, Travis is a big one just because, and it's odd just because I wasn't physically there on deployment. I was sent home, like I said, my unit rotated 2 weeks earlier than when he was killed. So even just not even being there, I still felt that survivor's remorse and survivor's guilt that, I should have extended and I should have been there, and being left off with all those what ifs as far as could I have done something somehow, some way to change the outcome has been a difficult one because you're not going to get any answers for that, no matter how many times you ask.
Yeah. No.
So that's been a challenge. And then honestly, just the adjustment back to civilian life is a pretty big adjustment that, still working with.
Yeah. And so that's a daily battle. I don't know. I'm a few years older, so I feel like there was, definitely your time frame was definitely the military. And it's funny. I think it's crazy because I was active duty, then I got out, and then you're into the civilian world. Like I can't imagine you and then Jason's here, like guys that are like for 3 days I'm in the military and then I'm not, and then like I don't know how you guys, deal with that. I can imagine I've always struggled. I think it's one of the things, if you look at it, and that's a pretty honest thing you say about it, is like struggling to the military thing. I don't think any of us really get over that whole sense of like togetherness, sense of like the same mission. Like, hey, I outrank you. If I told you to do this, just fucking do it. Like,
right.
What's your fucking problem? Like, that's,
yeah.
I do that every day. And like, I'm better at that now. Now I have to empower my subordinates, lead them to believe in the cause and, listen to how they feel. But I'm also like, dude, I'm your fucking boss. And I told you that has to be done. So just fucking do it.
Yeah.
So I don't think that ever leaves you. So I hope you don't have some hope there's a magic pillar like 40, 50 that goes away. I don't think we ever get rid of it. I think it's a struggle that happens to a lot of veterans is we constantly have that with us. You can never take it out of us.
I think big adjustment was going back to Ohio State and just being 29 with 9.5 years of military experience of discipline and all that has been instilled. And then you go to classes with 19, 20-year-olds who don't care. Who just don't care.
Right, they don't fold the laundry at their house.
Yeah, you just want to yoke them up by the neck and say, "Why are you on Facebook in the middle of a class? Like, what's going on? Like, you're being fucking rude and disrespectful." But that's just how they are.
I feel like we just bonded. My kids, I hope you're listening to this. One of them has Facebook. Nate, I hope you're hearing this because he's the one that's like, Nate, why didn't you empty the dishwasher today? Dad, I worked. I was at work all day today. I'm like, where the fuck do you think I was? I just came home and sorry, you work 4 days a week, for 3 months of the year. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, it is crazy. It's a struggle, I think.
Yeah.
And people, we're making light of it, but I think that's one of the things you talk about. If you have a veteran on your team and in the military, it's probably my biggest struggle, personally, is with my wife. Actually, all joking aside about military structure, like I'm on time or early to everything, and when my wife is late, I can't stop it. It just sends me into this it drives me crazy, and before I know it, I'm acting like a fucking madman. I'm ready to kill people. It's crazy. So, and all joking aside, I tell my wife, I've come to an agreement with my wife is like, if it doesn't involve me, I don't give a fuck if my wife is late or not. But if it involves me and you're late, you need to be ready for me to be to lose my shit, because I'm going to be like, what in the hell? What are you doing? My wife is like, it's 5 minutes. And I'm just like, it's 5 minutes to you, but it's a principle of it's 5 fucking minutes. It's like, you could have got up 5 minutes earlier. You didn't need to you didn't need to foam your fucking latte and your coffee. And I joke aside about this, and this is what I'm trying to say is people in teams that have military in the new world of 2022. We're supposed to understand people and understand those. As a veteran, if you have veterans in your team, you need to really understand that the majority of us are very structured. Some aren't, like that 2%, they definitely are, but they're very structured. And things like being late to a meeting, not communicating or some things like that, it can put us into a whole tizzy that.
Yeah. Communication is a big one for me.
Yeah.
I am, and as you know, as you get up into the military and leadership roles, you got to be detail oriented. You need all the details. Yeah. And I'm just at work, I'm like, what? Give me more details. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They'll just be like, hey, can you go over to this school and cover this at this time? And I'm like, for what?
Yeah, where's the other person at?
What's the rest of your telling me? So it's funny because you mentioned that and then couple that with a 9-month-old as far as trying to get somewhere on time. And I am
It's
still
not
trying to
out.
figure out when I need to start getting him ready to leave on a certain time and when and all that. And it's been 9 months and it's been
The
a
9 month
crazy
old.
shit show.
No, that's it's coming,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Your world's gonna change. I can't get it's getting better. It's actually like it's funny. I will say my 3 boys are punctual. I'll give them that. Like my youngest one is on the spectrum of like he drives me crazy because he's even worse. Like he has to be like 30 minutes early. So it's also now like that annoys me too. Like what doesn't annoy me? Like he's super early. Yes, he's so detail oriented that it drives me fucking annoying. So it's hard to be like, come on. It's like, but no. All joking aside, like it's exciting. The 9 month old, you have a road. I wish I could go back. My boys are getting old and unlike some other people, most of the time I wish I could go back. Sometimes I'm like, thank God you're dealing with that, not me. But it's a great thing, and it's great to see. Like I think having your job, you're getting to deal with the new generation of children, which is probably gonna help you.
Yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. So are we ready for the second bourbon break? We're an hour and 10 minutes in. I have to say that I'm only to rub it into Jason because we're a good 15 minutes longer than he could do it because he didn't have a good, interesting conversation.
Is he still snacking
earlier.
back there?
Yeah, he's so upset about it. He pretended like he's not. But so the second one, we're going to go with a Jim Beam product. We're going to go with Booker's. We're going to go with old school one here. This is actually from 2018. You help yourself first so I can turn the page. And what'd you call it? My joke book?
Your joke book?
Yeah, it's a joke book. It's actually pretty good. It does have jokes in it, but you took a good one today. I'm so pissed about the immaturity one. That was good. I was going to use that on you. But for most people, Booker's is actually produced by Jim Beam. Jim Beam is located in Claremont, Kentucky, and is one of the leading brands for some of the most famous bourbons and whiskeys in the world right now. It's actually was founded in 1795. It has 7 generations of Beam. The Beam family have been involved as master distillers and distillery. The Jim Beam product or the Jim Beam name came out around in 1943 in honor of James B. Beam, who actually was pivotal in rebuilding the brand back after Prohibition. Again, this is home to one of probably like the last 2 old school distillers that are out there. Fred No, who's been the master distiller since 2007, and is actually the 7th generation family distiller. His son Freddie No was taken over, so he's 8th generation, but and he's doing some other stuff in a different brand. But like a lot of distilleries in the United States, it was actually bought by another company. Was bought in 2014 by Suntory Holdings. And the one we're having tonight is Booker's. It's one of the brands from Jim Beam. This was actually created in 1987 by Booker No, who's Fred No's dad, and this is his namesake bourbon. It's the first barrel strength that came out, and actually was the first of their small batch collection. And for people that are bourbon nerds, Booker No was actually the founder of the term small batch bourbon. They released about 4 of these, generally 4 a year since then. What's great about this is it's pretty neat. If you can see up here, they actually release a year, batch, and a name for them. It's pretty cool. This one is from 2018. It's the 3rd release of 2018 Kentucky Chew. This one's 126 proof. What I love about Jim Beam, they're super specific about it. It's actually 6 years, 4 months, and 12 days old. Like I said, it's 126 proof. The mash bill is 77% corn, 13% rye, and 10% malted barley. And if you haven't had Booker's, you should absolutely get them. All of them are good. I haven't one that I don't like. Some you like better than others, but thought I'd bust this one out for you. Hotel Covington's a good one. This is one of my favorite Booker's. So yeah. Cheers.
Choose one of the best.
Ooh. I'd always just have a bite.
Oh, yeah.
So good. All right, so I think we're running out of questions now. My actual questions, the questions on the board have been pretty quiet. Now comes the time I think we'll talk about, one of the big reasons for starting the podcast is actually to honor the veterans that, that survived the battlefields like Landon did, myself, either Iraq, Afghanistan, or wherever he went, but ultimately came home and lost the fight at home. So tonight, I'd like to take the opportunity to honor another Marine like yourself, Corporal Clay Warren Hunt from Houston, who's 28 years old. Clay died in Houston, Texas on Thursday, March 31st, 2011. Clay joined the United States Marine Corps close to the time you did in 2005. Completed the School of Infantry, which I thought was pretty cool, an infantryman like you in 2006. Just like you, deployed to Iraq in 2017 with the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines in Fallujah. While I was in Fallujah, was actually wounded in a sniper attack, wearing his Purple Heart. He eventually recuperated from his injuries in Iraq and actually graduated from the United States Marine Corps Sniper School in 2008. Just like you, didn't have enough, decided to go back to Afghanistan in 2018 and was part of a NATO multinational task force that was operating in southern Afghanistan. Clay was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps in 2019. He cherished his time in the Marine Corps. When he talked to his family, he absolutely loved the unconditional bonds and camaraderie that he built with his band of brothers in Iraq and both Afghanistan. And like many of us, he often questioned why so many of his close friends and others, paid the ultimate sacrifice and he didn't. And ultimately, he that struggle is probably the reason why he decided to make a pretty horrible decision. And I'll say that it's not the right decision ever, but he talked to his family. He had a smile that would light up the room. And you always hear this from a lot of these people that go down this road. And they said that his energy and just his rapport with people was his greatest asset. And his family went on to say that there's no better son than anybody could ever hope for. So again, if you're feeling this way, or it's someone that's feeling this way, absolutely reach out to the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. Press 1, or you can text 838-255. So again, super important. Feeling down, know someone that's feeling down, give the Veterans Crisis Hotline a call. We made jokes earlier in the podcast about the VA, but this is not the VA. Reach out to them. There's professionals that can help you. And again, like I'll continue to say as we do this podcast, that this is not a good option. It's the worst option. There's better options, and people like myself or the Veterans Crisis Hotline will help you out. Just talk to somebody before you make a decision that really kind of affects everybody else. So, again, this is bringing the end of episode 8. Thanks for your flexibility.
Yeah.
I know you had some issues as well, but thank you for coming on. It's been an honor to sit down and talk with you. I'm disappointed with you. So probably like your family is that you weren't in the Army. It would be such a better conversation if you were an airborne, infantryman, and we could share a bond like that. But someday I hope that happens.
It would have been an All-American.
I know, yeah. Everyone's Someday we're gonna get another 82nd guy here someday. If I gotta call him up,
had it in my contract. Go 82nd All-Americans.
You should have told me that.
And I was like, "Fuck."
You should have said. Now you're gonna get. Now I hope your son tells you no a lot. No, Dad, no. That comes back to you.
Oh, sure.
So I decided, as you look into it, the Marine Corps has some great quotes. So I figured tonight we'll end it. We started with a great quote, Marine Corps quote, and we'll end it with another quote. No joking aside, and this is a tribute to, honestly, we made a lot of jokes about the Marine Corps. We just made a joke about the route you made, but dude, I have a lot of respect for the Marine Corps. Just as a lot of people do, and it's a great endeavor, and
yeah,
there's nothing better than that. So all joking aside, so we'll end it with a final quote from Ronald Reagan, who said, some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world, but the Marine Corps don't have that problem. So we'll end it at that. Thank you guys for tuning in for episode 8, and we'll see you actually with the timeline. We'll actually see you next week, 1 week away. So thank you for everybody. Have a great night. And again, Landon, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.
Appreciate it.